My name is Eric. I'm 27 now, but this happened about 5 years ago, during a camping trip with 3 friends. We'd been planning it for months, a long weekend away from everything. Just us, the lake, and the kind of silence you can only get deep in the woods. The place we went to wasn't a big campground. It was an old, mostly forgotten spot near the edge of Pine Hollow Lake in northern Montana. The only reason we even found it was because my friend Dylan's uncle had gone there decades earlier and said the fishing was incredible. We packed light, tents, coolers, flashlights, and a couple of rifles just in case of bears. The drive there took almost 8 hours. Once we turned off the main road, it was another 40 minutes of dirt and gravel through trees so dense the sunlight barely hit the ground. When we finally arrived, the place looked perfect. The lake stretched out like glass, surrounded by pine trees that went on forever. The only sound was the wind in the branches and the occasional call of a loon. No other campers, no cell service, total isolation. We set up our tents near the water line. Dylan and I shared one tent, and our other 2 friends, Ben and Marcus, set up about 10 feet away. After a few hours of fishing, we started a fire, cooked dinner, and just talked. It felt like one of those nights where the world slows down. No stress, no noise, just peace. At around midnight, we started hearing splashing sounds from across the lake. It wasn't unusual, there were fish jumping all the time, but this sounded heavier, more like someone walking through shallow water. We laughed it off, assuming it was some kind of animal, but the sound kept going, step after step, slow and steady, moving along the far shoreline. Then it stopped. A few seconds later, we heard another splash, closer this time. We all went quiet, staring into the darkness across the water. The firelight barely reached 10 feet out, and beyond that, everything was pitch black. Ben grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the lake. The beam cut across the surface, but there was nothing there, just ripples spreading across the water. We decided it was probably a deer or moose and went to bed. But around 3 in the morning, I woke up to something that made my stomach twist. It was the sound of breathing, not snoring, breathing, heavy, slow, and just outside the tent. I froze. Dylan was still asleep beside me. The fire had burned out, and the only light came from the faint glow of the moon through the tent fabric. I could hear it moving, slow footsteps circling around us. Whatever it was big. Then I heard the zipper on our tent shift. Just slightly, like someone had brushed their fingers against it. I whispered Dylan's name, and he jolted awake. I pointed at the door, and for a few seconds, we just listened. The breathing was gone. The woods were silent. We didn't sleep much after that. When the sun came up, we checked outside. There were footprints in the dirt, but not like any I'd ever seen. Barefoot, human-shaped, but way too long. The toes looked spread apart, almost claw-like. Ben and Marcus said they'd heard something too, but thought it was us. We decided to stay one more night, mostly because we didn't want to admit how freaked out we all were. We told ourselves it had to be some drifter or hunter passing through. That evening, we made a bigger fire, trying to shake off the nerves. Around midnight, the wind picked up, and a light fog started forming over the lake. Dylan was the first to notice something. "Look," he said, pointing toward the opposite shore. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw it, a figure standing right at the water's edge. It was tall, too tall. It didn't move, didn't sway like a tree or cast a normal shadow. It was just standing there, perfectly still. Ben grabbed the flashlight again, but before he could turn it on, the figure crouched down, fast, and vanished behind the fog. The next moment, we heard splashing. Closer. It sounded like someone running through the water straight toward us. Dylan shouted and turned on the flashlight, sweeping the beam across the lake. For a split second, I saw it. Pale skin, long limbs, moving low to the water like an animal. And then it was gone. The splashing stopped just short of the shore. None of us spoke. The air felt like it was holding its breath. Then, slowly, something rose out of the water about 20 feet away. A head. White, hairless, with dark holes where eyes should have been. It stared at us, motionless. Marcus screamed, and that seemed to break whatever trance we were in. We ran, grabbed what we could, and piled into Dylan's truck. The engine roared, tires kicking up gravel as we tore out of there. We didn't stop driving until we hit the main highway. We came back in daylight the next day to grab what we'd left behind. The tents were ripped open. Everything inside was soaked, even though it hadn't rained. Near the shoreline, right where we'd seen that thing, the mud was disturbed, like something had crawled out of the lake on all fours. We never went back to Pine Hollow. And the weirdest part? A month later, Dylan's uncle called him, said he'd looked through some old camping journals. He swore he remembered seeing something in that same lake back in the 80s, a pale figure that watched him from the water before disappearing. I still don't know what it was. But sometimes when I go fishing alone, I find myself staring at the water, half expecting to see it again, standing just beneath the surface, waiting. If this story's got you hooked, you're gonna love the next one. It's even creepier. So make sure you're subscribed, drop a like if you're into these unexplainable encounter stories. We went camping deep in the White River Forest last fall, not the part people usually go to. This was farther north, beyond where the marked trails end. You have to drive down a dirt road that narrows so much it barely counts as a road at all. My friend Evan had found the spot online from some hiking forum. He said it was quiet, remote, and pristine. That word pristine sounded perfect at the time. We got there around late afternoon. The sun was starting to set, the sky turning that faint orange glow that filters through the trees. The forest was dense, thick with pines and oaks, their branches twisting together overhead so tightly you could hardly see the sky. When the wind blew, the trees creaked like they were whispering to each other. We unpacked the car, carried our gear about half a mile from the makeshift parking area, and found a small clearing with a few flat spots for the tent. The air smelled clean, sharp pine and damp earth. It was beautiful. Even the birds were quiet, no chirps, no distant rustling, just wind. We set up the tent, got a fire going, and cooked a couple of cans of chili over the flame. It felt peaceful, the kind of peace that makes you forget how far from civilization you actually are. By the time darkness fell, the only light left was from the fire and our small lantern. Evan was sitting across from me, poking the fire with a stick. When we heard it, a whistle. 2 notes, clear, sharp, almost musical, but not quite right. I thought it was the wind, but Evan looked up immediately. "You hear that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Probably just the trees." We listened for another minute, and then it came again. 2 short, quick notes, the exact same tone and rhythm as before. Evan frowned. "That's not wind." He stood up and shined his flashlight toward the trees. The beam cut through the smoke, illuminating the first few trunks, but beyond that, it was pitch black. The sound had come from somewhere out there, maybe 50, 60 yards away. He called out, "Hello?" Nothing. Just the sound of the wind moving through the leaves. A few moments later, it came again. Only now, it sounded farther away. We both laughed it off. Probably someone hiking or another group camping nearby. Except, we hadn't seen a single car or set of footprints since we arrived. Still, we shrugged it off and went back to talking, trying to ignore it. But as the night went on, the whistle didn't stop. Every few minutes, we'd hear it, same pattern, same distance. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther. Always 2 notes. It was strange, too consistent to be random, but too irregular to be mechanical. The timing never stayed the same. It almost felt like whoever or whatever was doing it was waiting for our reaction. Eventually, we tried to sleep. We doused the fire, zipped ourselves into the tent, and laid there listening to the forest around us. The night was cold, and the ground was uneven beneath my sleeping bag. I was drifting in and out of half sleep when I heard it again. Faint this time, but close. 2 notes. I held my breath. Then another whistle, this time farther off, like an answer. My chest went tight. I turned toward Evan's sleeping bag and whispered, "You awake?" He didn't answer right away, then quietly said, "Yeah." We both just laid there, staring at the top of the tent. "Maybe it's people," I whispered. Evan shook his head. "No one's out here, man. You saw the drive up." The wind picked up, and the tent fabric flapped softly. I tried to convince myself it was fine, that it was just echoing between the trees. But then the next whistle came, and it wasn't faint anymore. It was right outside the tent. It sounded like someone standing 10 feet away, whistling directly at us. 2 short notes. Evan bolted upright. I did too. The tent was pitch dark except for the faint glow from the dying fire outside. We didn't move, didn't speak. We just listened. There was a soft crunch of leaves, slow, deliberate, like someone walking. Then silence. Evan grabbed the flashlight and unzipped the tent, just enough to stick his hand out and shine it. The beam swept across the clearing. Nothing. Just trees, shadows, and smoke from the fire. Then, another whistle. But this time, it came from the opposite side. Evan spun the flashlight that way, and for a split second, the beam caught something, a figure standing between the trees. It was tall, too tall, and completely still. The light hit it just enough to show the outline of a body, but not a face. It looked like it was standing unnaturally straight, like a mannequin or something that didn't quite understand how to be human. Evan cursed under his breath and zipped the tent closed again. I could hear his breathing, shaky and uneven. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. He didn't answer. We sat there for what felt like hours, whispering theories back and forth. A prank, a lost hiker, maybe even an animal that somehow made that sound. None of it made sense. Eventually, the whistling stopped. We waited another hour in silence before we convinced ourselves it was gone. At around 2:30, we decided to leave. We didn't even bother packing. We just grabbed the flashlights and started hiking toward the car. The air was cold, our breath coming out in white puffs. Every few minutes, we'd stop and listen. Nothing. Then, from behind us, 2 notes. This time, louder than ever. We broke into a run. The forest floor was uneven and full of roots. The light from our flashlights jumped wildly as we stumbled forward. I could hear something moving behind us, not running, but following. Every 30 seconds, the whistle came again. Always the same, always just close enough to keep us from stopping. By the time we saw the reflection of the car's headlights through the trees, my chest felt like it was going to explode. We practically dove into the car, slammed the doors, and locked them. For a few seconds, we sat there in silence, both of us staring into the dark forest beyond the windshield. I could see the glow of the tent far off, faint against the trees. Everything looked calm. Evan finally exhaled and said, "We're good." But before he could even start the car, there it was again. 2 notes. This time, it came from right outside the car. Evan froze. I turned my head slowly toward the window on my side. There was something standing in the tree line, pale, thin, motionless. The headlights barely touched it, but I saw enough to know it wasn't human. The limbs were too long, the neck too stiff. It just stood there, watching. We sat there for maybe 5 seconds before Evan floored it. The tires spun in the dirt before finally catching, and we tore down that narrow path without looking back. We didn't stop until we hit the highway. Neither of us said a word the whole drive home. When we got back to town, Evan made me swear we'd never talk about it again. I didn't argue. But sometimes, when I'm outside late at night and the wind blows through the trees, I swear I still hear it. 2 short notes, faint and distant, like it's calling me back. What would you have done if you saw that thing in the trees? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want more encounters that'll keep you up at night.